President Trump has offered Mexico a reprieve from new tariffs. The 25% tariffs, initially slated to be imposed on Mexican imports, have been suspended until April 2, 2025. This follows a phone call between President Trump and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. The news was met with a sigh of relief by Mexican officials and businesses. Global markets, which initially dipped after the tariff announcement, saw a slight recovery following the suspension. However, the markets remain jittery, reflecting the unpredictable nature of global trade relations. The tariff suspension applies specifically to goods traded under the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. This agreement, which replaced NAFTA, is the cornerstone of trade relations between the three North American nations. The suspension suggests a willingness from the Trump administration to engage with Mexico on trade issues, at least in the short term. However, the temporary nature of the suspension leaves the door open for future negotiations and potential trade disputes. The situation with Canada remains less clear. While a Canadian government source has indicated an expectation of similar tariff relief, there has been no official confirmation from the Trump administration. President Trump has been publicly critical of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in recent weeks. This adds another layer of complexity to the already intricate web of North American trade relations. The temporary reprieve on Mexican tariffs offers some breathing room for businesses and markets. It remains to be seen how this will play out in the long term. The future of U.S. Mexico trade, and indeed North American trade as a whole, hinges on the evolving dynamics between these key players. The USMCA, which came into effect in 2020, is the successor to the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. It governs trade relations between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, covering a wide array of sectors. These sectors include automobiles, dairy, lumber, and financial services, highlighting the breadth of the agreement's impact. The USMCA was a signature trade policy of the Trump administration, aimed at modernizing NAFTA and addressing perceived imbalances. One of the key features of the USMCA is its 6-year review cycle. This provision allows for periodic assessments and potential renegotiations of the agreement's terms. This aspect of the USMCA underscores the fluid nature of international trade agreements and the need for ongoing dialogue between signatory nations. The current tariff situation, though not directly linked to the review cycle, highlights the importance of this mechanism. The USMCA has been credited with streamlining certain aspects of North American trade. However, it has also faced criticism, particularly from those who argue that it has not fundamentally addressed the complexities of globalized trade. The agreement's impact on job creation and economic growth in the three signatory countries remains a subject of debate. The ongoing trade tensions, despite the existence of the USMCA, suggest that the agreement alone cannot fully resolve the deep-seated issues that underpin trade disputes. The USMCA is designed to foster greater economic integration between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. However, the recent tariff threats and subsequent suspension highlight the delicate balance that needs to be maintained. The agreement provides a framework for trade, but it is the political will and diplomatic efforts of the three nations that will ultimately determine the success of North American trade relations. The U.S. trade deficit continues to be a pressing concern for the Trump administration. In January 2025, the deficit reached a record $131.4 billion, marking a 34% increase from the previous year. This surge in the trade deficit is largely attributed to a 10% rise in imports. This situation underscores the challenges faced by the U.S. in a globalized economy, where interconnectedness can sometimes lead to trade imbalances. The Trump administration has repeatedly pointed to the trade deficit as evidence of unfair trade practices by other countries, particularly China. However, economists argue that the trade deficit is a complex issue with multiple contributing factors. These factors include differences in savings and investment rates, currency valuations, and global supply chain structures. Attributing the deficit solely to unfair trade practices presents an incomplete picture of the global economic landscape. The imposition of tariffs, as seen in the case of Mexico, is one of the tools the Trump administration has employed to address the trade deficit. The logic behind tariffs is to make imported goods more expensive, thereby encouraging consumers to buy domestically produced goods. However, tariffs can also have unintended consequences, such as raising prices for consumers and businesses, disrupting supply chains, and triggering retaliatory tariffs from other countries. the trade deficit is unlikely to disappear overnight. Addressing it requires a multifaceted approach that goes beyond tariffs. This approach includes promoting domestic savings, investing in education and infrastructure, and engaging in constructive dialogue with trading partners to address legitimate concerns about unfair trade practices. A more holistic strategy is necessary to navigate the complexities of the global trade landscape and ensure a more sustainable and balanced trade relationship for the U.S. The recent tariff standoff with Mexico and its subsequent suspension offer a glimpse into the Trump administration's approach to trade. President Trump has often employed a tactic of brinkmanship, using the threat of tariffs as leverage in trade negotiations. This approach has yielded mixed results, with some concessions from trading partners, but also creating uncertainty and disrupting global markets. Beyond tariffs, the Trump administration has taken a number of other actions that have significant implications for U.S. trade relations. These include withdrawing from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, renegotiating NAFTA into the USMCA, and engaging in a trade war with China. These actions reflect a shift away from multilateralism and towards a more unilateral and protectionist approach to trade. The Trump administration argues that its trade policies are designed to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition. However, critics argue that these policies are counterproductive, harming American businesses and consumers, and ultimately undermining the global trading system. The long-term impact of these policies on the U.S. economy and its standing in the world remains to be seen. The recent tariff episode with Mexico highlights the unpredictable nature of the Trump administration's trade policy. It remains to be seen whether this approach will lead to a more favorable trade landscape for the U.S. or further exacerbate global trade tensions. As the world grapples with the complexities of a globalized economy, finding a sustainable path forward on trade will require careful consideration of both domestic interests and international cooperation.